Hi everybody, thanks for joining us for this month's update on our livestock markets. I'm Colter Brown from the Northern Ag Network. I hope wherever you're watching from, spring has officially sprung. I kind of want to knock on wood when I say that because winter just keeps starting over and over again, but at least we are going to have some green grass this year. And hey, the markets gave us plenty to be excited about in April. We broke all kinds of records and there's optimism for more to come. So it sounds like things are just starting to get good. Today we're going to talk about some of those records broken on the fed cattle and new contract highs in the futures. We're going to talk about the big results we've been seeing at auction markets and some of these bull sales too that are way up over last year's average, and we'll look at some of the impacts drought is having on the cattle cycle and where things may go from here. First, though, I want to take a second to thank our sponsors, of course. Ag Risk Advisors continues to support us. If you haven't checked out their podcast, At the Table with Ag Risk Advisors, give it a listen and you can learn more about livestock risk protection. Go to lrpadvisors.com to learn more. And thank you to the Wyoming Beef Council for their support and their efforts to build demand for beef. We're definitely looking forward to seeing Ann and the crew in Cody for the first ever joint meeting of the Wyoming Beef Council and the Montana Beef Council. Well, now as we get into our markets, I don't think anyone in the cattle business is surprised to see these prices higher in 2023, given what we've been through the last several years with drought, the pandemic, tight margins, and of course these feed costs that went through the roof. But boy, we might have been a little surprised by just how aggressively this market rallied in April. You can see the live cattle futures there. They hit contract highs in April, did back off a little bit after that cattle on feed report that we'll talk about here in just a second. But boy, a lot of things to like. And as you look at the cash fed cattle prices, that's where we set records. And boy, look at this chart here. I had to open up the graphs there to be able to fit the rally in these prices. In just the last month, live cattle up $12 to $16 and dress up $20 to $24. That's $300 per head added in just the last month. So suddenly feed yards are clearing $400 a head on a cash basis. And like we said, we broke those records multiple times in April. We topped out with a weekly average at 180.44. That broke the record that was set just the week prior. But before then, the record was in November of 2014. And boy, I think we could break those records again, maybe several times before this deal's over. Now, don't feel too bad for the packer. I know there's not much risk of that happening, but they are still making money on this deal. Of course, getting help from box beef continuing to rally. The choice cut out as high as we've seen it since the fall of 2021, above $3 a pound. Brett McRae says I have to buy him a beer because he called that was going to happen in April. I haven't paid up yet though. But Packers still able to clear a profit here. We are thinking that because they're not cutting the kill at all. They're killing more cattle than they did a year ago, despite those profits reportedly being at break even. I think they might be a little bit better than that. So as we look at just the increases we've seen in the live cattle prices over the last month, very strong here, $3 to $5, and we are expecting to see a little bit of weakness in the summer. That's a seasonal issue, but boy, these prices are going to push higher still. Really the big story though is the feeder cattle that saw a tremendous rally in April. We're talking $11 to $12 even on that September contract. We've got fall feeders above that $2.30 mark, so that gives us a lot of optimism, and your guess is as good as mine as to just how high this cattle market can get. CattleFax is saying that given the relationship between the feeder futures and the spot fall contracts, we could easily see prices on 5.5 weight steers in the $240 to $260 money. Could be higher than that too, especially on those good northern cattle. I mentioned the cattle on feed report. Do want to touch on that for just a minute. Was a bit of a disappointment. We still saw inventory down below the previous year, but not as much as was expected. So we did see some weakness develop in the futures there, but they definitely rallied. The support though for the feeder futures, a lot of that coming from corn contracts starting to pull back, getting that cost of gain in a little better shape. At the end of March, USDA released their prospective plantings report, and that told us to expect 4% more acres of corn in 2023. So if we see that increase in acreage and trend line yields with a little better moisture perspective, that could raise stocks to use and hopefully bring that corn price down a little bit. Cost of gain definitely been an issue for us, and of course on the hay side too, we've had to pay record prices the last couple of years. It's going to take time to rebuild hay supplies, but should see those prices come down if we can get the moisture situation to straighten out. Now, I do want to dive into our local auction markets. We have seen some impressive prices over the last month. Feeders just not slowing down at all. At Torrington Livestock, we saw 4 weights top out at 309, excuse me. A lot of those 5 weights pushing well up into the 290s, even the mid 5 weights at 252. 6 weights very strong, and you've got even some of these heifers that are trading at levels we have not seen in 8 or 9 years. 5 weight heifers at Stockman's Livestock in Dickinson, 229 to 253. We also got to talk about this replacement heifer market. There has been a lot of competition from the feeder market for replacement heifers, and that's just helping to push those values higher. At the public auction yards in Billings, we saw 8 weight replacements selling from $1.85 up to $2 a pound. So some very strong prices there. And we think that's helping to push the heiferette market higher as well, because we've seen prices there like you couldn't believe. $180 is not out of the question on these heiferettes. Just depends on their age and weight, of course. Cow-calf pairs very strong at Faith Livestock. We saw the pairs top out at $3,400. Just amazing to see where these prices are. Of course, slaughter cows maintaining their strength. They haven't backed off at all, still selling primarily in that 95 money up to $1.05. So very strong prices on the way ups. As we turn to our production sales, that's some of the highest prices we have seen all spring here, just blowing last year out of the water on these averages. 5L Red Angus sold 190 bulls for an average of 49 1/4. The Arnson Angus Ranch, 203 yearling bulls for 69.79. Got the wrap on the Hereford sales season there with 1,577 bulls averaging 7% above last year, 31% above 2020's average, and that's with 43% more bulls sold. So there's a lot of demand here for quality genetics, really from every breed. We're seeing some of the averages on these sales over 60% above last year. So a lot of demand, and boy, it just gives us a lot of optimism for the direction that we're headed here. Now, I want to wrap up talking a little bit about the cattle cycle. I mentioned that we've seen this U.S. beef cow herd contracting for the last 4 years, but with these prices that we're talking about here today, it makes us think that expansion has to be there. These prices are telling us to expand, especially if we can pull back on these costs to some degree, but I don't think we're quite there yet. A few reasons that I say that. I want you to look at this drought outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. Now, it shows conditions improving considerably in eastern Montana, the Dakotas, Wyoming, Nebraska, so these pastures could start looking better. It's going to take some time for them to heal up. That's the first thing. Producer finances are also stressed by paying these high feed costs for 2 years for a lot of them. But then you look south into the southern plains where drought conditions are holding on, expected to continue. That is definitely cow-calf country. There's a lot of them down there. We are still seeing liquidation. We saw some of that in the cattle on feed report. More of those calves being placed on feed and earlier. So don't think we're going to be there yet on expansion. CattleFax says we could still see 1.5 million beef cows move out of this cattle herd before the end of this phase of the cattle cycle. So I think we're going to see those inventories continue to tighten, and that should be supportive to prices. So that's a pretty positive outlook as we look forward. I know we're really excited for this summer video sales season. It looks like cow-calf producers could very well find themselves in the driver's seat of this market real soon. Thanks for joining us this month. We'll see you next month for more on our livestock markets.